Okay, take 3,000,000 because I can't seem to do this right the first time. Welcome in, welcome in. This video is just going to be a quick tone tutorial on how I get my guitars sounding super huge in a mix. Disclaimer, I'll get into it a little bit. There is a lot of, I say a lot of, but there is a lot of production elements that are in this. Not a lot, just a few things to make everything stand out more. I feel like with a lot of tone tutorials, they fail to mention that in the context of a full song, there's other stuff going on. So I'll get into that as well. But before we do any of that, I'll play the song, let you hear it, and then I'll get into everything I've done to make the guitars sound the way they do. Sounds fucking huge. Okay, so to get right into it, I guess the main part of the tone, so if you notice, I have quad tracked guitars panned hard left and right. You know, if you're recording metal, that's the first thing people tell you is pan your guitars hard left, hard right to get that wide, stereo effect. What I did for this is I quad tracked, meaning I have two guitar tracks panned hard left and right, and then I have another set of tracks panned hard left and right. But something I tried with this, and I think I really liked it, is I also added a fifth track, which is just a mono. I didn't pan anything, it's just right down the middle. But for these two, I'll go, and I know this might be labeled weird, so if anybody's freaking out about how I have this set up, don't worry, I'll explain. So the main two guitar tracks are these bad boys right here, again panned hard left, hard right, and that's being sent to my first guitar bus. And if you notice over here, I'm using the Fall amp by BoneCasketAudio. Let me get it pulled up here. You want to screenshot, these are the settings. I'm not doing anything crazy. This is just a preset that I just have that I made myself. I'm using the default cab IR. It looks like I used a little bit of the thicken knob, not too much. I think I was just trying to turn it down and just didn't turn it down all the way. The low dirt, that's something I really like to use. And then yeah, again, nothing too crazy. I mainly just messed with like the amp. I really like pushing it mid forward. Took out some lows, added some highs and some presence. Nothing crazy. Brought the drive up a little bit. Had a little bit of high cut, about 9.2 kilohertz looks like. Again, nothing crazy. I just messed with I think the default tone. Just added some more gain. Messed with some of this stuff up here. Feel free to screenshot, because like I said, I think it sounds sick. I'll play it just this so you get an idea of what this sounds like. Okay, something else I forgot to mention. When I was recording this, all of my guitar tracks had automation, because if you notice let me see if I can find the spot. Yeah, this spot right here, the guitars actually drop down an octave. There is automation. I just printed it to audio, so if I actually turn off the amp, so you can kind of hear it. That's just like a trick I actually learned from Buster Odoholm. Plus, it just saves on CPU power instead of having all that automation going on. My Mac is not as beastly as I would hope, but I just have it printed to audio. So if you're hearing that, if you're wondering how I done that, that's all I did. Is just have the automation printed to audio. So the next guitar track is these right here. And I should also mention, every guitar track has, I don't know if I said it before, everything is printed to audio as far as the automation goes. Oh, excuse me. So if you're hearing this and you're wondering how I did it, that's how. The second guitar tracks, which are these guys right here, which if you notice, I have them labeled Gojira guitar because I'm using Archetype Gojira. It looks like this. I went in a little bit more in depth with this one. The cab, I didn't use the default IRs that came with this. So I'm actually using, what am I using for this? If you can find them, they're called, I think, Catharsis IRs. I don't remember where I got them. I've just had them for a really long time. I'm using one on press high, whatever that means. Thought it sounded good. And then this bad boy over here is actually Lance Prince. I don't actually know how to say his last name. I'll put his picture up on screen. He has done like Alpha Wolf, Dealer, Polaris, basically he's like the Australian Will Putney. I have his IR pack. I have, every IR pack. This one happens to be an orange cab thing, and I just settled on this one. I thought it sounded really cool. I have some EQ going on within the actual plugin itself instead of doing like a post EQ. I just, didn't really think it made sense. Of course, I have, the pedal section, basically using it like a normal tube screamer. I have a little bit of the distortion set about 9 o'clock. Of course, level all the way up. Tone is set to about 1 to 2 o'clock. Of course, everything else is turned off, and that sounds like this. So if you notice, obviously this guitar tone will sound different than the first one I showed. And if you're sitting there wondering why you would want a quad track, this is why. Because if you notice with the first guitar tone, it sounds cool, but it's missing something. Now, I could fiddle with this, add EQs, and do all sorts of processing to get it sounding like whatever. But for me, it's a lot simpler to just layer it, quad tracking, with a different guitar tone that, this first guitar tone here might be lacking in something that this has. So this really fills up the lower mids, it beefs it up. This has that like high end, like attack, and them together will sound like this. If you notice them together, it just really fills out that space, and it's really easy to just throw on a guitar preset or like, a plug-in that has a preset and then just go along with it. Like, that's fine. I find that this not only gives it some character, but also makes it sound unique, without it sounding too sterile. And then the last guitar track is this mono guy right here. And if you notice, I'm using the thaw amp again. This EQ, just honestly a real simple EQ, just filtering out the low end. I could have done that in the plugin. Don't really know why I didn't. These are the settings I used for it. Now, if you notice, I'm using this preset, the Lance Prince, the quads, and I have really just messed with everything. I even used the tone match this thing. Don't even know why. Normally I don't. Looks like, let's see. I don't know what IR this is. I think it's the one that's just in this preset. I don't think I changed it. I think it's just messed up for some reason. But the mono track, the idea I had for this one is these quad tracks that I did sounded great, but I needed something to really cut through the middle. Now, this isn't a groundbreaking thing. A lot of people do this, but I just felt that it needed something to just cut down the middle, and the mono track sounds like this. So, it sounds super dirty, but it has that grit that will really cut through. And like I said, I filtered out a lot of the low end because with guitars tuned this low, I'm tuned to drop F for this track. I'm using my ESP Viper 7-string baritone with, I believe it's Black Winter pickups. I'll put it on screen if that's correct. But with tunings this low, it can get real muddy real fast. So I just, like I said, I filtered out some of that low end and had it, and again with the, if you can tell by the amp settings, I really pushed the mids so it would, cut through everything. And now I will play all of the guitar tracks together so then you could see what they all sound like in unison. So yeah, it just sounds super filled out, and it almost sounds like dirty, because there's a lot of, people, they want the most crisp guitar tones, and I felt like with this song, it just, I don't know, like I said, adds character. It doesn't sound like one or two like presets you can just get. It actually sounds unique. So yeah, that's like the main gist of everything. Something else I did forget to mention is this guy right over here, this guitar layer. Again, this is just something I did like after the fact. I printed this to audio. All it is, it sounds kind of dumb on its own, but it's the high octave thing. It's just a layer for that, and this is what it sounds like. And then here at the end, I have it layering a octave down when the guitars drop. It just helps it cut through just a little bit more. Really quick, nothing too crazy. And I can play, let me bring all these back in, and I'll play everything with that guitar layer so you can get an idea what that sounds like. Yeah, so it just helps everything cut through. But that's basically it. I'll quickly go through everything else because of course I did talk about there is some production stuff going on, so nothing too crazy. I'll quickly go over like my bass tone and whatnot. I'm using for the bass, I have it printed to audio as well, but I'm using the Odahom Audio. I believe it's the Inferno bass is what I'm using. I'm just using the DI bass, and then I have before the amp an EQ that cuts out some just a frequency that was cutting through that I didn't really like, and then that's going into STL Tones Will Putney. I'm using it looks like the Error Zone preset. Don't think I really messed with anything. Here's the cab section. I honestly just really like the way this sounded. I don't really think I messed with anything. After the fact, this is actually for side chaining for my kick, which I'll quickly get into. So basically what it's doing is every time the kick happens, it gets sent to the bass, and these frequency bands here will actually duck out for the bass, so it allows the kick to really punch through. And I'll quickly show you what that sounds like. So yeah, it's just every time the kick happens, it's just completely getting rid of this. It's a little bit more harsh than what I would normally do, but that's pretty much it. Nothing too crazy. It actually looks like because I had mixed this a little bit after recording, so maybe I did remove it, because I did actually have this kick and snare sidechain to the guitars. I must have removed it. So actually not a whole lot of production stuff. Really the only production thing that I have going on is these guys. I have some impacts that I use, and then this noise that I could get into real quick. And this is what it sounds like. Yeah, so nothing too crazy. This noise actually is an idea I stole from Buster Odoholm. All it is, I don't have the original audio in here, I don't think. I do not. Basically what I did is I took my guitar cable and I just went to a new track and just added the Thal amp like this, and then unplugged my guitar. So the only thing coming through, the only signal coming through was the buzz from my guitar cable. Recorded that for like 30 seconds and added a shit ton of processing. Trying to think what I did. I think I added some sort of like vocoder, some EQ, and then something called gross beat, which I don't even know if I can find it. Let me see. Once I got it sounding the way I wanted, I printed it to audio. I think I added some reverb in there too, just to make it sound, I don't know, just to add like a background ambience layer thing. But yeah, nothing too crazy, at least as far as the guitar tones go. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Again, this is the first time I've ever done anything like this, so feel free to comment if I missed anything, or if you have any questions. I would love to do a follow-up. Yeah, I mean, that's... Oh, one more thing I almost forgot. Something that I have been dying for someone to explain in a video, and I guarantee someone is going to ask about it. So, if you notice in the song, which I'll play real quick. I don't know if you could hear that, but that real pingy dodgeball snare. Normal drum VSTs, you can't get that. However, I highly recommend, because I didn't talk about it, and I know someone will comment about it, the RS Drums Monarch Kit. I'll put a picture up on screen. If you can afford it, get it. I have, again, I printed it to audio, but I have the kick and snare layered, so you can get something that sounds like this. I'm telling you, it's a game changer. Okay, I'm recording this after the fact because I'm a dumb fuck and forgot to mention it in the original video. My mastering chain for everything here is, let me see if I can get it pulled up. It's just 3 plugins, because that's something that I realized I didn't cover, because that's the like 90% of the sound from this song. I'm using 3 plugins. Oh, excuse me, compressor, FabFilter Saturn, and OTT. I'll quickly go over those now. If you want a screenshot, here's my settings for that. I'm pretty sure this plugin's on sale currently for 30 bucks. If you have 30 bucks, I highly recommend this one. I'm using it in the most simple way possible. This is just getting everything at the source, compressing it, you know, as a compressor would. Nothing too crazy with that. And then that is going into FabFilter Saturn, which if you have FabFilter Saturn, I highly recommend it. Looks like I'm doing really crazy shit here. All I'm doing is separating these out in, let's see, 6 different bands, and really just focusing on the mids and boosting the shit out of them, adding saturation. not really messing with the EQ at all, besides this band 5, boosting some of the highs, because without it, it would sound kind of muddy. Really, I'm just using this to add saturation and a bit of distortion. And then after that, it goes into OTT, which I think I started using because a lot of dance music artists started using it, but for this, it seems to work pretty well. Again, I'm pretty sure this is free, so free's always good. You can screenshot this using my settings for it. Nothing too crazy. Again, basically what this is doing is it's taking the compressed signal from the first compressor, the saturation from the second, and it's just squashing it down even more so it's not, jumping out all over the place. Nothing too crazy, but I've realized I forgot to mention it in the original, recording. But I don't want this video to run on too long, so if there's anything that you guys thought I forgot, feel free to comment. If you have any suggestions for future videos, comment. If you just want to leave a comment, that'd be great. Leave a like, share, whatever you want to do, that's cool. If you found this informative, I would be happy to do a follow-up to this in the future. I would love to do more like this in the future. So yeah, with that being said, my name's Brian, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.